Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank my colleague from Pennsylvania, Mr. Cartwright, in highlighting the problems of insects on the border. It's a real problem and something we deal with all the time. I represent over 820 miles of the border from, Eagle Pass, Piedras Negras on the Mexican side to El Paso and Ciudad Juarez on the Mexican side with Beto O'Rourke, Philemon Vela, and Henry Cuellar. We represent all of the Texas border. So this is something that we engage in on a weekly basis. And I don't have much time. And so my first question is to you, Mr. Judd, and I'm going to try to keep our little tete-a-tete tight. We've spent a lot of time here discussing the violence on the border and the danger of the border, and that's expanding in the interior. I was down the border last week in Ojinaga and Presidio, and I know one of the challenges I heard a lot was the lack of manpower in some of these locations, especially a place like Presidio. Can you tell us a little bit about what this means from an operations perspective, and if you can keep that answer tight?
Absolutely. Without the manpower on the border, we can't properly, we just physically can't secure the border. We need men and women on the border to do that. When you have specific areas like Presidio, where the living conditions are absolutely horrendous, it's nearly impossible to keep agents in that area, and so we need to do something. It was interesting that a couple of years ago, they took away the designation from Presidio.
You're reading my mind, brother. And so my understanding that some of these locations have changed their status from hardship posts, and I've seen a disproportionate share of agents leave or simply transfer out. Part of the move away from hardship designation was an effort to save money. Is the union open to some form of solution that would allow an agent to move up in terms of eligibility or preference for the next post if they spend a certain amount of time in a hardship posting?
We've been pushing the agency for that, and unfortunately, they haven't reciprocated.
Excellent. I think we're going to have some more conversations on that. Mr. Starr, Ambassador Moser, I want to thank you all and your organizations and your predecessors for what you do. I spent 9 years as an undercover officer in the CIA. I was in some really dangerous places like Pakistan, Afghanistan, and I've been in embassies that have been bombed. I've been in embassies that have been shot up. I've been in embassies where thousands of people have marched on it, and because of the work of y'all two organizations, you had Mama Hurd's youngest son come home. So I appreciate that and what you do. My only real concern is the cost of some of these embassies. Texas A&M University built a 110,000-seat stadium for about $450 million. I think there's some expertise we can rely on there. But one of the problems that I actually have, and what I appreciate that you all do with the travel advisory in Mexico, the advisory in Mexico is the only advisory where you all split it up by state, right? And I think that shows the important relationship that we have with Mexico. We can't secure our border. I know Mr. Judd and his colleagues are working hard every single day, and we can facilitate the movement of goods and services at the same time. We must, and that's super important. So Juarez, 2008, murder capital of the world. 2010, it's half as many murders as Detroit and New Orleans. Ojinaga, right? There's less murders in Ojinaga than there are in 2014 than there were in Baltimore. So my concern is when we talk about Mexico is a big place. 80% of the violence is in 20% of the country, and if you break that, that's about 5 states, and if you break that down into municipalities, it's about 20 municipalities out of hundreds. And I get frustrated when we try to talk about Mexico as one place. And it's not. And so I'm just looking to work with y'all on making sure that the travel advisories in some of these cities are reflective of the needs on the ground. And I made a comment when I was in Ojinaga. I was like, I've been in some pretty dangerous places, and Ojinaga is not one of them. And I'm looking, just for y'all's opinion on being able to ensure that those travel advisories reflective of those communities. Because on the border, it's not 2 communities, it's 1 community. And the importance of trade and people, goods and services going back and forth is so critical to this country. What's good for northern Mexico is good for southern United States, and it's good for both countries. And, Mr. Starr, your comments, please.
Thank you, Congressman. Specifically to that topic, Both OSAC and the warnings that we work with from each individual consulate and the OSAC country councils and the city councils that we have look specifically at the areas. The consular warning sheets are countrywide, but there are also post-security bulletins that come out from the consulate. And I think this is one of the arguments for why we have consulates in different places. American citizens can go to that website for each individual consulate and look at what's going on in that immediate area. I recognize that, yes, sometimes the consular warning sheets are a rather blunt tool because we have, I think, Sue, was it over 25 million Americans a year visit Mexico, and we do have to give them sort of honest, open advice. But we also further break it down for those people that are in specific areas, and we try to do that. But I will take your concerns back with me.
Thank you very much. And my last point, and I'm already over time. I apologize, Chairman. Ms. Sarneo, please communicate to the members of the Foreign Service. You know, they're sometimes overlooked at the difficulty in their job. They're doing it in hard places. They're working hard every single day to export our soft power around the world, and they do it in tough places. I recognize that. I had the honor of serving side by side with many of those. Thank you for what you do, and please communicate that back. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.